Tutorial, I'm going to show you step by step how to build this simple React app. You can see this is a quiz app I built in a few minutes, and I want to show you how to build it. Now you can see that at the first time, all the answers are displayed and the next button is disabled. So if I select an answer, I can click on next and I can keep selecting the answers. And at the end, it's going to tell me my score. So if I select the last one, capital of Syria, Damascus, finish. So game is over and your final score is 2. The correct answers for this quiz is, and it displays the answers. So this is the simple version of this quiz. I would like us to go through it step by step. We are going to code it, and I'm going to also show you the step-by-step procedure right here in my website. So this is a step-by-step procedure I'm actually going to follow in this tutorial. So let's go ahead to get started. If you are joining me for the first time, please remember to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss all these beautiful tutorials I make, just like this one. So let's go ahead to get started. Okay, so I've started VS Code. You do need to have VS Code installed. So I'm going to start a new React application. So I'm going to click on terminal and I'm going to run the React command to create a new React application. First, let me clear my console. So it's going to be nps create React app. And let's give it a name, quiz tutorial. Let's call it quiz tutorial simple or simple quiz tutorial, because after now we are going to make the next one, which is the complex one, simple quiz tutorial. And so I'm also going to keep the browser open so that in case we are building, we are going to be looking at the output of our code as we build up the functions. I'm going to go to the location and open it in VS Code. So I'm going to click on File and I'm going to click on Open Folder, and we call this Simple Quiz Tutorial, and I open it in VS Code. So the first thing I'd like us to do is to simply run this application just to make sure we have everything working correctly. So I'm opening a new terminal and I'm going to run the command npm run start, and it's going to start up this application, and we are going to keep the window side by side. Okay, so this is a window which is open currently. So the first thing we want to do is to go to the src, and I'd like us to remove everything inside the app component. So open the app component and I'm going to just remove everything all the way to the header. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead to save. So file save, and I have everything fine. So if I put a H1 here and I say welcome to React, and I save everything, you can see that it updates the UI. Okay, so the first thing we want to do now is to import our quiz database. The quiz database is available on my website. So if you look at my website, you can get the link to the description box. In the description of this video, you can find a link to my website. You simply copy this quiz data and we are going to use it right here. So the first thing we want to do here is to create a component folder that is going to hold our components. And the first component we are going to create is a quiz data, and that is going to be like our local database of our quiz. So quizdata.js, and I'm going to paste what I copied from my website in here. So these are quiz database. Of course, you can add more quiz. We can also get this quiz from a real database. For now, let's keep it simple, but in subsequent tutorials, we are going to read from database. So please, you can subscribe to my channel so that you get notified when I make a new video. So the next thing we want to do is to create the styles. So instead of writing now the styles manually, I have a few styles on my website. So if you look at my website, let me show you. So these styles here, you can simply copy them and use it. So these are the only styles we need for this tutorial. So let's go back to, we are going to create a new file. So it's going to be styles.css, and it's going to contain what I just copied from my website. Okay, so this is what we have. So let's save everything and go back to app.js. Okay, so we now have to create the actual quiz component that is going to control our quiz. So I'm going to create it and call it quiz.js. So this is actual quiz component, and this quiz component is going to be a class component. So to create a class component, simply type RCE and hit the enter key, and you have a class component. Now, to be able to get this snippet, IntelliSense completing this code for you, you need to install the extension React Snippets. So you can watch the previous video, or you can simply type React snippet. I think that is the name, and you can see it right here, simple React snippet. Install it and it can give you the IntelliSense. So once you want to create a class component, you type RCE, hit the enter key, and it's going to generate the initial code structure for you. Okay, so we have our quiz component. We now want to mount this quiz component in the app component. So I'm going to first save everything. So instead of having the H1 tag here, I want to have our quiz component mounted here. And I want to use self-closing tag, and I'm going to save everything. So for now, nothing changes except you have the quiz right here. And the reason you have it is if you go to the quiz component, you have that here is returning quiz. Okay, so let's go ahead to continue. The next thing we want to do is to think about what states or what will make up this application. So states are like the variables that is going to be part of this application. So let's start writing them out. So we want to create the initial state. To create it, we have a state variable that is going to be an object of all the states. So the first thing we want to create, what we want to think about, is the current index of the quiz that is currently displayed. So it's going to be index 0 because the quiz database it has content having IDs of 0. So let's say the first quiz that displays is index 0, and the current quiz will always be updated by the index. Okay, we also need the options for the quiz. So we are going to store it in options. This is the options that the user should be able to select one option. I need a comma here, and the next thing we may need is the score, because each time the user answers, we want to update the score of this user. If he scores correctly, we are going to increment this by 1, else we are going to leave it the way it is. We also need a variable to control whether he can click on the next button or not. So this variable, we call it disabled, and initially is going to be true because he cannot click on the next button unless he selects an option. We also need another variable to control if the quiz have ended. So we call it quiz end. For now is false, so it only ends when the current index is equal to the length of the quiz minus length of the quiz database, or the quiz data minus 1. So once you get to the end last quiz, then we can set this variable to true. We also want to store the answer the user selected in user answer variables. So I'm going to also create that, and initially it's going to be null. Okay, so I'm going to save everything, and the next thing we want to do is to load the first quiz. So I'm going to write the function called load quiz to load the first quiz based on the initial or the current index. So we call it load quiz, and this function is going to be an arrow function. It takes no parameter, it simply loads up the quiz from the quiz data, and what happens is going to first get the current index. So I'm going to get the current index from the state. Current index, we retrieve it from the state, is going to be this.states. While getting the current index, we now want to set the question, the options, and the answer. So the question is what question to display on the screen, and the options is the options to be displayed on the screen. The answer is what we are going to compare with what the user selected. So here we are going to set the state by saying this.setState, and we provide a function for setting the states. We are going to return the new states. Question is going to come from the quiz data. We need to import quiz data, right? So import quiz data, right? Import quiz. I think I can import it this way. Quiz data from /quiz data. I think this should be it. Okay, so here I can now use quiz data, and I can take the current index, and I get the first quiz, then this is going to be the question. And the same goes for we also want to get the options, and also we want to get the answer as well. So I'm going to paste and then simply change these to these are the options, and this will be the answer, and this is going to be the options, and this is the answer. Okay, so there is initial quiz data. So we need a few more functions. So what happens when the user clicks on the next button, right? So when the user clicks on the next button, we want to retrieve the user selection and store it in the variables that we defined. We store it in the user answer. This is what the user selected. So initially we display all this, and then we are going to when the user clicks on an answer, we are going to store it a user answer, and then we are going to compare it with the actual answer. So we are going to create a function called the next question handler. And this function is going to be an arrow function. So we want to first retrieve the user answer, the correct answer, and the score, because of course we have to update the score as well. So we are going to get the user answer. In this case, for now it should be null. And we also need the correct answer, and we need the score. And this is going to be coming from this dot state. This is the current state. Okay, so now at this point, we want to update the state. We want to update the state because the user have clicked on the next button. He have made a selection and he clicks on the next button. We need to update the state and do a few things. So we are going to update the state by calling this dot set state. So we are going to set the new state, and it's going to be, the first one is going to be the current index. In this case, is going to be current index plus 1. The current index is going to be current index is equal to this dot state dot current index plus 1. The next state we want to set is the user answer. So in that case, we are going to set it to null because you already have moved next. And we also want to set disabled to true. I think I should be writing another function before I actually do this, but since we've started already, no problem. The function I was talking about is called the check answer function. So when the user selects an answer, what is going to happen is that the check answer function is going to execute. The check answer function is simply going to enable the next button because he has selected an answer. So I'm going to write a function called check answer. This function is going to tell us what the answer the user selected. So it's going to give us the selected answer, and we are going to use this selected answer to update the user answer and do a comparison with the actual answer. And if it's correct, we are going to update the user score or increase the user score. So check answer is going to set the state of this dot set. We are going to set the state, and we are going to set the user answer to be the selected answer, and we're also going to enable the button. So we are going to say disabled is equal to false. So it means that the next button, it should be enabled. Now the check answer assigns the user answer. So at the next question handler, when the user clicks on next, we now want to assign the score. So we don't assign the score when the user clicks on next, but we don't assign the score when the user clicks a question and answer, because he can actually click another answer as well. So he can select one and later select another one. So it's only when he clicks on next, we are now sure that the last one he selected was actually his selection. So that is why we are assigning the score when he clicks on next in the next question handler. So I'm going to do a check here. If the user answer is equal to the correct answer, and if this is correct, I'm going to increase the score, set the state, increase the score by setting the state, updating the state. So set state, and I'm going to say score is going to be score plus 1. Okay, so this is the much we have. So the next thing we want to check if the quiz have ended, right? So the quiz, if it's ended, then we have the function that allows the user to click on finish quiz. So let's call that function finish handler. So this function is going to be called when the user clicks on the finish button, and the finish button is going to be displayed when the quiz have ended. So let's write the function first, the finish handler, to handle when the quiz have ended. Okay, so what happens here is that we are going to check if the current index is equal to the last index. So if the current index, so this dot state dot current index is equal to the quiz data dot length minus one because it's a zero-based index. If this is the case, we are going to end the quiz by setting the quiz end state to true. So this dot set state, and we are going to set the quiz end to true. So quiz end. Remember we said we have a state to control whether the quiz have ended. So we set it to true. So I'm going to save everything just to make sure we don't have any errors. So we have logo undefined. Let me just take out some of these warnings out this line and the next one. Okay, perfectly okay. So everything is still fine. So the next thing we want to do is, at this point, we want to begin the quiz. How do we begin the quiz? we are going to call a React lifecycle method called component.didMount. So in component.didMount, this is what handles when the React app loads. When the React app loads up, we want to begin the quiz, and what do? We are going to say this.load quiz, and it's going to load the quiz. Let's see if everything works. I'm going to save. Okay, so nothing happens because we are still rendering this text quiz. We're also going to write a function component.didUpdate. So component.didUpdate is what happens when the user makes a selection, or after the quiz is loaded, any other changes, whether a user makes a selection or he clicks on a button, we want to move to the next quiz. One thing that might change in component.didUpdate is when the current index is no longer equal, or the current index changes. Let's put it this way. So we want to track when the current index changes. If the current index changes, we want to load the next quiz. So in this case, the current index loaded with 0. When any update happens, the current index changes. We are going to check it, and then we are going to load the next question. So I'm going to write the component didUpdate. We are going to get the current index, and we are going to simply check if the current index have changed. So this.state. So now there's something you need to know about the component didUpdate. This component didUpdate lifecycle helps you to know when a state in the DOM have changed. So it keeps track of the previous state when it changes to a new one. So it keeps track so it can compare the two. So it takes two parameters. We can one of them is the pref props. In this case, we don't have any props, but we have a state, pref state. So we are going to now do a check if the state changes, and the state change we are interested in is the current index. So I'm going to say if this.state.current index is not equal to, if it have changed, then it means that it's no longer equal to the previous state, pref state.current index. So if this happens, it means that the state have changed, and we are going to load up the next quiz. So let's just take this, and we are going to set the new state. So I'm going to take this. Basically, we are loading the next question. So I'm going to just copy this and use it here. So we are setting the next question, reading the next question from the quiz data using the new index. In this case, the new index is the current index, and the previous index, the original index that was changed, is stored in the pref state.current index. We are going to first return the header, or not the header, but the question, the current question. So hey, let's put it on the h2 tag, and we are going to display the current question. So the current question, first let's get it, let's retrieve the current question first. So we are going to retrieve the current question by destructuring the state. I'm going to say const, I'm going to assign the question because that's part of the state. I'm going to assign the options, assign the current index, and I'm going to assign the user answer and assign the quiz end. These are the states we are interested in. Is equal to this dot state, yes, because we are going to need this. Now we have the current question, right? Because the current question is assigned already when component didUpdate, or even at component didMount, we are loading it. So it means that if we display the question here, we have the current question. So I'm going to simply display the question, and if I save, we should have the first question displayed. So the next thing we want to do is we want to now display the options under it. But before we do that, I want us to apply the styles to our component. So to apply the style to our component, I'm going to import these styles into the base component, which is app.js, and it will apply to the child component. So I'm going to import the style sheet, so it should apply our styles at this point, as you can see right here. So we display the question. Now we want to display the options under the question, but before then we want to display the question number, like question 1 of 5, question 2 of 5. Let's display that on a H4. Since I'm going to be displaying some text and also together with some variables, I'm going to use string interpolation together with string literals. So I'm going to put a backtick here, and inside this backtick I'm going to write question. I'm going to now use the current index. So I'm going to put question current index then of the Total question number of the questions is going to be quiz data dot length, I think. So let's save everything to see what we have. So you can see question 05. At this point, I will collapse this sidebar so that I can have some space. Okay, so the next thing we want to display is the list of options, and this list of options is available in question.options, quizdata.options, which is actually what we assigned in the options state, and we also have it when we destructured the state, we have it here. So we are going to use these options and just map through it and display all the options on the screen. So first, I'd like to check if this option is options are null. So I'm going to say options is options equal to null. So I'm going to wrap everything inside curly braces. So we are going to check if the options is null. Okay, so if the options is not null, we are going to display the options.map. Otherwise, we will display span and we are displaying maybe nothing, because this will only happen only for a very tiny period of time. Okay, so here we want to now display the actual options. So we are going to display in a paragraph tag. Each of the options will be inside a paragraph. I'm going to display the option. So let's just display the option just to see what is there. So let's display the option. So if I save, it says option is not defined. So, okay, sorry, I have to place a return type, which is option. Okay, so it returns a paragraph tag of option. So save. Okay, so we have our options displayed right here, as you can see. Okay, but this is not all. We want to add a styling to these options, and we also want to add the click handler or the event handler to it. So to do that, we are going to first add the key to each of the options, because if you are displaying a list of items, you need the key. So the key in this case is going to just be option.id, because that is the ID of the question. And then we want to apply a class name, and that is going to be a style. The style we want to apply is called option. So if you look at our style sheet, we have a style called options. You can see right here. Now, if the option is selected, if the user have selected an option, it's going to be selected. We're also going to apply another style called selected to it. But if not, it's going to be options. So it's going to be a conditional style that we are going to apply there. So let's see how we can do that. So first we apply the options. This is fine. So if I save everything, it applies the option. Now we want a situation where if a user, of course, I think this should be hand, yeah, but nothing happens. But if a user has selected an item, we should change the style to highlight the selected item. So the next option is going to be conditionally applied. So I'm going to apply that style, or it's going to be inside here. So the second one is going to check whether the user answer is equal to the current option, which means that the user has clicked on an option. And in that case, we are going to add the second style called selected. Otherwise, we don't apply nothing. So, So otherwise, so this is going to be otherwise, we have null, right? Yeah, so this closes this one. So this conditionally applies the style when a user makes a selection. So I'm going to save everything. Let's see what we have. So let's try to click. So nothing happens. So nothing happens because we've not applied a click handler to the options. So let me apply a click handler, and to do that, we are going to apply an onClick to the paragraph tag. So I'm going to go ahead to shift this closing tag, and I'm going to now apply a click handler. So it's going to be on click as equal to, and we are going to call the function which is this.check answer, and we are going to give it the option that is being selected. So at this point, when a user selects an option, we are going to compare it with the user answer, and then we are going to highlight the selected option with the style selected. So let's try to see what happens here. And I'm going to click, and you can see now it applies the style as expected. Okay, so the next thing we want to do now is to display a button below this place and below the options that says next. That's the next thing we want to do. We want to display a button that says next. Of course, we can just display a button there. So I'm going to start So I'm going to display a button there. So let's say button/button and say next question. You can see next question. However, we want to display this button only if this quiz is still ongoing. If the quiz has not ended, then we don't display this button. If this quiz is still ongoing, there are still questions, next questions to click, then we have to display next. Otherwise, we don't display it. So we are going to check if the current index is still less than the total quiz numbers, then we are going to display this button. So I'm going to highlight, I'm going to enclose, wrap this around curly braces. Now, how do we check to display this button? Only if the quiz is ongoing, or only if the current index is less than the total quiz. So I'm going to say if the current index is less than the total quiz data dot length -1, okay, if this is the case, and the button should be displayed, So this is basically it. Now the button should have a handler as well. So we have a handler for next. Remember, we have a click handler for the next button, and we call it next question handler. So the disabled state of this button is going to be coming from our state. So disabled is going to be coming from the state. So it's going to be this.state.disabled, and the onClick handler. So let me just, onClick is going to be this.next question handler. Now I don't call it this way because the next question handler doesn't need a parameter, as you can see. So I simply call it directly. So we should have this button disabled initially when the state is disabled, this button is disabled. And of course, initial state is disabled, as you can see, when the quiz begins. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to conditionally display another button called finish. So this button called finish will be displayed only if the quiz have ended. So if the quiz end variable is true, we display this button. I'm simply going to use exactly the same way I display this button. I'm going to display the next button, and that button is going to be finish. So it's going to be finish quiz. So you don't have next, but you have finish quiz when you get to the last question. So it's going to be finish handler. And that should make sense. Button disabled. And again, in this case, we are going to do opposite of what we did here. So here we are going to be checking if the current index is equal to the last question. If it's equal to the last question, we will be displaying the finish quiz. In that case, the user will have to click on finish quiz to end the quiz. Okay, so let's go ahead to test everything. Let's see what we have. So let's start. New Delhi, next question. Select, next, select, next, select, next, select. Now, this is the last question, and it has finish quiz. So we don't have the finish handler working, so let's go fix that. So the finish handler, let's see what's happening here. So it sets the quiz end, right? Okay, so what it means is we are going to, before we display anything, we are going to check if the quiz have ended and display the score. So if the quiz have ended, we are going to display the score sheet. So what it means is that we are going to come here and we are going to check if the quiz have ended, and we display the score sheet. So I'm going to say if quiz end. If the quiz have ended, we are going to display the score sheet. And here I'm going to simply return exactly the same way we have in the render. We are going to return a JSX. And let's assume I just say start with a div tag, and we are going to tell the user that the game is over. Final score is, and we display the score. So the score is going to be this.state.score. Okay, so let's try it and see what we have. So let's just go 1 goes to final score is 0. So I failed everything. But also take note that the quiz is displaying question 0. So we don't want to display question 0. We want to display question 1. So let's go to change the index here to be +1. And that's going to ensure that we display the correct index. I mean, not really the correct index, but the correct index that should display. Okay, so now we want to display when the quiz have ended, we want to display all the correct answers for the user to see. So we want to display all the correct answer for the user to see. So what I'm going to do here, under the H1 tag here, I'm going to show him the correct answer. So I'm going to put a text that says see the correct answers below, and I'll display the correct answers. So I want to display the correct answers as a list, and now the correct answers is coming from the quiz data, and it's coming from the answer fields of each of the objects in the quiz data. So I'm going to map through the quiz data and simply display for each of the items, I'm going to display the answer field. So I mean, it should be like this. So if you go back to the quiz data, you can see the answer field. We want to display this answer field for the user because these are the correct answers. Okay, so we are going to say quiz data.map, and we are going to say item index. We are going to return another JSX, and inside here we are going to now return the li, and here we are going to display the item.answer because item is the quiz object. Now we also, if we are displaying a list, we need a key. So the key here is going to be the index. We also need to apply the class name, which is the style. So the class name is options, which is what we have. Okay, so let's go ahead to test. Let me answer this correctly. What's the capital of Nigeria? Abuja. Capital of India, is it Punjab? I don't know. Capital of Australia, Sydney maybe. Capital of Turkey, Istanbul maybe, I don't know, but capital of Syria, Damascus, I'm sure. So final answer is 2. I got only 2 answers correctly. This is the end of this simple quiz in React. I want to keep it simple. We are going to continue with this. We are going to make it a bit complex. For instance, we want to give the user option to retry, and we also want to give maybe option to select multiple choice. So there are a number of enhancements we want to make. Please, any enhancement or any improvement you want us to make in this quiz, please write it in the comment box below this video, and please subscribe to my channel, like this video if it has been informative for you. Let's see in the next part.